Hello and welcome to a new ship tour, and today we're taking a look at the Mein Schiff Relax of TUI Cruises, the newest ship of the TUI fleet that was taken into service last year in 2025. The ship is 332.63 meters long, 42.14 meters wide, and has a gross tonnage of around 157,651, and she can take up to 3,984 passengers on board. She was built in Italy at the Fincantieri shipyard, and we're starting our ship tour as always on the lowest deck. On deck 2 we only have entrances, so we can straight away go to deck number 3, which is called Welle. All decks have German names linked to the ocean, so this means a wave. That's the wave deck. Here on deck 3 we have the hospital and of course a lot of cabins, and we also have the reception area, the lowest deck of the atrium. In this area we also have the so-called Leselounge, which is the library on board, which comes with big panoramic windows, so a very nice space to read a book. Of course we have the reception here in this area, and we also have the cruise manager's office here. And we have the barista bar, which is not included in the all-inclusive that you usually have on the ships of TUI Cruises, but this bar is excluded from it, therefore usually it's not very crowded. In case you're wondering why it might look a little bit dark, that is because, as always, I did my ship tour very early in the morning when most passengers are still sleeping. And at this time TUI Cruises is dimming the lights, not fully illuminating the ship, to save a bit of energy as most passengers are still sleeping. So it might look a bit dark, but of course that's only because of time, and during the day the lights are much brighter. We can see it a bit better on the pictures that I include in my ship tours as always. There you can see a bit better how the ship usually looks like. But of course I'm always doing my ship tours this early because passengers are still sleeping, otherwise due to personal rights I would have to blur all visible faces, and that would take a long time, and it would also make the video quite unwatchable. So I prefer to do it early in the morning, even if the lights are a little bit dimmed. Here we are in the main staircase, the staircase B with 8 elevators. The other staircases A and C have less elevators. We're not using the staircase right now, we're using the stairs here right in the atrium to get up to the next deck, which is deck 4 Atlantic. This is one of the main decks of the ship, and we have only public areas here. We are now heading right to the end of the ship and starting our tour there. And here we have the main restaurant, the Atlantic restaurant. Here we can see, in addition to the restaurant, which is only used when the main part of the restaurant is already full, it can also be used as an extension to the bar next door, and we're now heading into the main part of the restaurant. On the other ships of TUI Cruises you have two types of the Atlantic restaurant, called Atlantic Classic and Atlantic Mediterranean, but that was changed here on the Mein Schiff Relax. We have only one big Atlantic restaurant, which is only separated into Atlantic Deck 4 and Atlantic Deck 5. It's a very big, spacious, nice restaurant with a lot of space, a lot of tables. So usually already this part is big enough, and the extension hasn't been used much on my cruise, but if there's a very high demand you can still use the extension. So there's always a table available here, and you have very big panoramic windows with a direct view of the ocean. There's no promenade in between, so you have fantastic views. And this is also now the only ship in the fleet of TUI Cruises where you have a main restaurant right after the ship with a view over the sternwave. That was the standard on the old ships of TUI Cruises, but those have been sold. On the other ships that are now still in the fleet, you have the Diamond there, which is a specialty area with specialty bars and specialty restaurants. That's not available here on this ship, and instead you have the main restaurant again with a nice view over the sternwave, which I prefer a lot because it's very nice to have this fantastic view during breakfast, lunch and dinner. Here we have the Atlantic Bar, which is the bar that belongs to the restaurant, so it's a perfect place for a drink before dinner, for example. But of course also it's one of the main bars of the ship, and if it's crowded you can also use the tables of the surrounding extension of the Atlantic restaurant. It can also be used as an extension of this bar, of course, so that's a very, very smart idea. And I really like the design of this bar and restaurant. So here you can see right on the other side you have the extension of the restaurant, but you can of course also use it as an extension of the bar. Here we can see the bar itself with a typical design of TUI Cruises, and we're gonna go to another part of the bar which can be used as a second extension of the Atlantic restaurant, which is of course a very, very smart idea to have a very flexible area. We will see that in a second. It is a part of the bar here on the right side, but you will see that there are still the restaurant tables, so you can also set up a full table setup for dinner, for example, here in this restaurant. As you can see here, there are full-sized tables, so it's not only part of the bar, but it can also be part of the restaurant. And if you take a look at the deck plan, you can already see that is also the intention. It is shown there as a part of the restaurant. We're now back in the middle of the ship at the atrium. Here on the right side, you have the possibility to book your shore excursions. You can do that yourself on a tablet here, or you can also do it together with an expert of TUI Cruises. But as always, I would recommend to book your excursions in advance at home as soon as possible, as they get sold out quite quickly, especially, of course, the good excursions. On the other side, you can already book your next cruise, and you can also find a nice model of the ship. We're now heading towards the Mein Schiff bar. We will see it a bit better later on, but I'm going to show you the tuk-tuk here, which is also quite nice part of the decoration of this area. You can see it on the picture as well. This is already part of the Mein Schiff bar, which we will see later on, because now we're heading to the other side of the ship where we have some more public areas. On the outside we can find a photo gallery, we can find an atelier, and we can find a tattoo studio, which is also quite unique. I think you can only find this on the ships of TUI Cruises. So now let's head over there, walking past the elevators, and here on the right side we have the photo gallery and the tattoo studio, and straight ahead we have the atelier, which is used for art classes. Cannot go inside, but we can take a look through the window here. Now we're heading further on to the middle of the ship, and here we have the Mein Schiff Bistro, which is the restaurant that is open 24/7, so here you can always get some food. And what I really like about the restaurant is the look of it, because it's a bit more colorful than usual. Usually TUI Cruises is not very colorful, is more like an elegant and subtle design. But here they used a bit more colors, which I really like, because I think it suits TUI very well to be a bit more colorful. So I really like those orange chairs here, for example. In general, it's a quite nice area. Of course, it can get quite busy, especially if you're coming back from an excursion that starts in the morning and comes back in the afternoon when the main restaurants are already closed. Of course, the buffet is also open all day long, but it's a bit further away from the entrances, so this area here can get a bit busy in the afternoon especially. Here we can take a look at the atrium. As always on new ships, the atrium is rather small, only stretching over 3 decks, as of course a big atrium is taking away a lot of space, so you will not find this on most new ships. And now we're heading to the Mein Schiff bar again. Already mentioned that before, we've seen the tuk-tuk, and here we have an area which I really like, again for the same reason, because it is very colorful. And as you may know, I really like colorful ships, and that's something I really like about this part of the ship, that is much more colorful than TUI used to be. But I also like the design of the Mein Schiff bar, which is less colorful but also very elegant. It has a little bit of an art deco influence here. Looks very nice, but it's also a bar that can get very, very busy. It's one of the most important bars on the ship, of course, being an atrium bar. So the nicest seats here are usually taken, so you need to be very lucky to get one of those nice seats. It is also a rather small bar, so that's why it gets busy. As we're talking about small, we're now heading to the shopping area, which is surprisingly small. I was expecting it to be much bigger, as the ship is bigger than the other ships of TUI Cruises, but the shopping area is much smaller than on the other ships. It only comes with 2 shops. There's the main shop, which offers a bit of clothing, a few souvenirs, sunglasses and similar things. It's not too big. And then we have only one more shop on the other side, and that's the shop for perfumes and things like that. And as you can see, also that is not too big, it's rather small. Even on smaller ships, it's usually much bigger. So that was quite surprising to see that there's no focus on shopping here on this ship. seems to be not that important, and the focus is more on bars and restaurants. Speaking of which, here we are in the Chalet Bar and Restaurant. So it's used as a bar and as a restaurant. It has a bar part, which we can see here on the left side, and then on the right side we have the restaurant part. The bar is included, so you don't have to pay extra. It's included in the all-inclusive, but the restaurant is a specialty restaurant, so you need to pay extra for the food. It's themed for the countries of the mountains of the Alps, so Austria and Switzerland. So you have a Swiss and Austrian cuisine here. In one of the later videos you will also see what the food looks like. But it's also a bar, and many guests seem to not realize that it's not only a restaurant but also a bar. So the bar was never that busy. So if you're looking for a rather calm bar with a relaxed atmosphere, this is one of the places to go. We're leaving the area now. We're continuing, heading to the hairdresser, which we can see here, and then further on to the front. So as you can see, that's already it with shopping area. There are no more shops on board, just those two we've just seen, and now we're already at the front part. And on this deck, I would call it the entertainment part of the ship, because here we have the nightclub. It's not the Uptown Bar anymore like on the other ships. It is now the D4 Club and Lounge, and as you can see, there are much more seats available. So on the other ships you have mainly a big dance floor and just a handful of seating, so it's only to be used as a nightclub. Here we have more seating options, so it can also be used as a lounge during the day or for events, for example. So that's also, in my opinion, a quite smart idea. As you can see, you still have a pretty big dance floor. In my opinion, a very nice futuristic design. So I really like the D4 nightclub here. We're continuing on to the front, and we're now heading to the theater. As you may remember from my ship tour around Mein Schiff 7, also here all entertainment areas are closed when they are not used, so no chance to go in the theater when it's not in use. But we can take a look at the theater after a show. As you can see here, it's rather small. That's quite typical for new ships, as theaters take away a lot of space, even though they're only used around 2 times a day. So instead of having a huge theater, they're doing shows twice instead. Right next to it we have another theater, which is called Blaue Flora, and it's a smaller theater which is used for shows that, for example, are not getting that much attention. You have not that much demand, so a small theater is enough. And the smart thing and the solution to the problem I just mentioned, that a theater is only used in the evening, is that this theater is also used as a lounge. And that means also when there's no show you can get drinks here. And also the same thing like with the chalet, a lot of passengers are not realizing that, so it is usually not very busy. We can now head up to the next deck, which is deck number 5, pier deck. And of course also here we have a theater in the front. We've already seen that, so we can skip it. And we're now heading to the casino and lounge. On German ships, casinos are not very important. Most passengers are not using them at all. So on some German ships there are no casinos at all, and on the other ships they are rather small. Just like here on the Mein Schiff Relax, also here the casino is pretty small and the bar is more important than the casino. As you can see, there are also just a lot of seats, and this is the only place on board where you're allowed to smoke inside. So that's the main purpose of this bar. It's a smoking bar, and the casino is just an add-on. And what's quite interesting, even though casinos are not very important on German ships, there is a second casino available. Right next to it we have the La Cage, which is a theater for burlesque shows, but as you can see, it is also a second small casino. You need to have a reservation for the burlesque shows. I have not used this area on the cruise, so I can't tell you something about the shows. As you can see, it's quite dark here inside. We can get a little bit better impression with the pictures how this area looks. It's not perfect, but it of course has to be a part of the ship tour. Anyway, so here you can see the La Cage for burlesque shows, and we're now continuing heading aft of the ship. We're now getting to a few restaurants. Here we can see the nice artwork next to the Neue shopping area. And now we're in the atrium again, on the upper floor, third floor of the atrium. And here we have two restaurants. And we have a new restaurant concept here on the ship that differs from the older ships of TUI Cruises. Because here we have specialty restaurants that are included in the cruise fare. Here we have the Sur Mer Bistro, and it's quite comparable to the concept of the new AIDA ships. They also have included specialty restaurants. This restaurant here can be compared to the French Kiss restaurant on the AIDA ships. It's a French restaurant with nice French cuisine, which is already included. You're not making a reservation in advance, you're just heading there and then you will be seated as soon as a table is available. So there can be queues. They were not too long here at the Sur Mer Bistro during my cruise. It took a maximum of 15 minutes waiting time and you got a table. If the weather is nice, it takes less time, then they can also use the outdoor area, which we will see later on. On the other side, we have a bigger restaurant, which is also something new on the cruise ships. It's a Greek restaurant. It's called Taverna Dionysos. And even though it's a quite new idea to have a Greek restaurant on board, the demand was very high. Even though it is a bigger restaurant, the queues were much longer, and I think here you will have to wait a little bit longer than 15 minutes at peak times. As you can see here, the restaurant is pretty big and spacious. Of course, it's also designed in a Greek style. Looks very nice, the food was very good. We will see that in one of the next videos, of course. But as I said, the queues can be a little bit longer, so I would not particularly recommend going here at peak times, maybe going a bit earlier or a bit later than most passengers would do, and then you don't have to wait. So that's at least my recommendation. So I've already mentioned that there is a promenade, and maybe you've already realized that the ship is a little bit smaller here. It's a little bit thinner, and that is because the ship is built in the modern way. That means the hull of the ship is pretty wide until the promenade, and then on top you have the hotel part, which is much thinner. That, of course, is made for two reasons. It saves weight, and of course, if the ship would have the same width also all the way to the top, it means you would have a lot of inside cabins, which are not the favorite of the passengers, and therefore they're trying to have not that much inside cabins, so it's useful if the hotel part of the cruise ships is not too wide. So that's the way they build ships nowadays. I don't really like it because in my opinion it doesn't look like a ship anymore if you look at the Mein Schiff Relax from the outside. But of course, it's a rather smart idea. What's also quite smart is the street art bar that we have just seen here, because it's located around 4 restaurants. Here we have the Fugu by Tim Raue, which is probably the most interesting restaurant on board. It serves fine dining as an immersive dinner show, so it not only serves fine dining food, but it also features a video and audio show presented by a famous German TV chef called Tim Raue. We will see a bit more about this restaurant later on in the video. Here we can see the street art bar again, this time with full illumination. I went here a little bit later when there was no passenger as well, so I can show you how it looks with all lights on. Looks of course much better, also quite colorful, and as I mentioned, the location is pretty smart because it's located between staircase B and C and between the restaurants Sur Mer Bistro, Taverna Dionysos, Fugu and the Atlantic Deck 5, and that's where we're heading now. Second part of the main restaurant. At TUI Cruises you do not get a reserved table for the whole duration of the cruise like on other cruise lines. You're just heading to the entrance and the crew member will guide you to an available table, so that also works very well. And we can see it looks a little bit different than the Atlantic on deck 4, but it has the same food. In the morning there are different concepts on deck 4 and deck 5 regarding buffet or served breakfast, but otherwise it's the same restaurant. And we will see in a second that you also have an atrium, so we can look down to deck 4 here in the restaurant. And there's the promenade around it, so you have a little obstructed view, but still you have big panoramic windows and the view over the stern wave. What I really like is that this atrium here is only stretching over 2 decks and not includes a lounge anymore like on the other ships of TUI Cruises, which was always a bit annoying when you hear, for example, the entertainment from the lounge in the restaurant or you're in a lounge and you hear people talking in the restaurant, noises of cutlery, or the noises when they are cleaning the restaurant. So I prefer this restaurant over the restaurants on the other ships of TUI Cruises. In the meantime, we've reached the promenade, and what I also really like about the ship is that it features a walk around promenade. So you can walk all the way around the ship. On the promenade is very nice for having a walk, for enjoying fresh air without entertainment, so that's quite nice. What I do not like about the promenade is what I already mentioned, that it's quite wide and all the balconies are looking down on the promenade. So if you have a balcony cabin, you do not have a direct view of the ocean, but you're taking a look down to the promenade, and just behind the promenade you can see the ocean. So I do not really like this. I prefer to have a direct view of the ocean. That's the downside of this wide promenade. One of the advantages is that you can use it also for a restaurant, so we've just seen the outer area of the Taverna Dionysus. We're now heading onto the front, and we are now heading up the stairs. That's not open in the night and during bad weather, so we're now jumping to the day when it was open. We can take a look at one of the nicest part of the ships, because the bow of the ship is accessible for all passengers. Downside is there are some cabins where you can take a direct look into the cabin and onto the balcony from the promenade, like those cabins we can see here. As you can see, the cabin windows are not mirrored, so you can look directly into the cabins, which is a big downside. Here on these cabins, at least now, which has been changed later on, the windows are mirrored, so you cannot look into the cabin, but of course you have absolutely no privacy here on the balcony. So I would not recommend taking a balcony cabins in the front part of deck 6 if you can choose your cabin. Also, there's a part of the ship's bow obstructing your view, especially here in the front, so I would not recommend those cabins. What I really like is that the bow is accessible. You can enjoy this fantastic view to the front, and you can also take a look all the way up to the bridge, so that is a fantastic space. As I've mentioned, not always open. Sometimes they have to close it, like during the night or with bad weather, but usually from here you have the best view. The ship is going into port, for example, leaving a port, so quite nice area. We're now heading back down. Here we can see those cabins that I would not recommend booking. If you have the chance to choose your cabin number, I would not recommend it. And now we're back in the early morning. We're continuing our ship tour, walking around the promenade. We're now heading to the outdoor area of the Sur Mer Bistro, and then we have already seen all parts of deck 5, the pier deck, and that means that we've also almost seen all public areas on the lower decks of the ship. There are just 2 more areas which I can only partly show you. So we're heading there now, but first let's take a look at the outer area of the Sur Mer Bistro. But as you can see, it looks exactly the same like on the other side, like the outer area of the Taverna Dionysus. Also comes with this partly covered roof with a nice illumination, so it is a very nice area to have dinner or lunch outside. But now it's time to head back inside and continue our ship tour, and we're now heading up to deck 6, which is called Coralle, which means coral. There we have a public area right at the rear part of the ship, but I cannot access it from deck 6, so we are straight away heading up to deck 7, Seestern. What I really like about the concept of the Mein Schiff Relax is that this area for the suite passengers have been moved from the front to the rear part of the ship. So here we have the X Lounge and the X Coast restaurant. Those are lounges and restaurants only accessible for those guests that have booked a suite, so I cannot access this area. They have the very nice view over the stern wave, but they do not have the view over the ship's bow anymore, like on some other ships of the TUI fleet. On Mein Schiff 1, 2 and 7, there is almost no possibility for regular passengers to enjoy the view over the ship's bow, especially there's no way to look at it from the inside. That has been changed here on the Mein Schiff Relax, as the suite area was moved from the front to the rear part of the ship. So those guests that paid a lot of money for the cruise, of course, are expecting a bit more, and they still have a nice area for themselves with a nice view, but the nicest area of the whole ship is available for all guests, and I really like that. In the meantime, we have skipped decks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 14, and we're now on deck number 15, and we are now reaching the so-called Spa and Meer area. That is the spa area on the ship, And as always, I cannot show it in the video because it is closed during the night, and as soon as it opens, of course, it's not allowed to film in there, so therefore I cannot show you the spa area, but it is located here at the front of deck 15 above the bridge, and there's even a relaxation area above the bridge wing, so it is a very nice area. But we are now heading up to deck 16, which is the next important deck with public areas only. And here we have the Osteria restaurant in the front, which is another specialty restaurant that is included in the cruise fare. Here you can get some nice Italian food like pizza and pasta in a very, very nice location. It looks fantastic in my opinion. You have big panoramic windows and a very, very nice design. From here you also have access to the captain's bar, which we will see in a second, which is one of the main highlights of the ship. So here we can see the pictures of this beautiful restaurant, Osteria Pizza e Pasta. As I said, it is already included. Another specialty restaurant that is included. Of course, I've been there multiple times during my cruise. But the official entrance to the captain's bar is on the other side. We're crossing another restaurant, and here we are now in the captain's bar. And this is my highlight of the ship. From here you have a wonderful view over the ship's bow. That's what I've just mentioned. On the Mein Schiff 1, 2 and 7 this would have been the suites area, so it would not have been accessible to me. But this wonderful and extremely beautiful bar is available for all passengers. Now you'd think, okay, if this is the whole bar and it has the nicest view of the ship, it must be crowded. And of course TUI found a solution for that. In my opinion, it's a quite nice and fair solution, because TUI said if you want to enjoy the nicest view of the ship, you have to pay a little extra. You don't have to pay for a reservation. It just means that the drinks are not included here. Usually on the ships of TUI Cruises you have all-inclusive. A lot of drinks are already included in the cruise fare, but here in the captain's bar you have to pay for all the drinks. That leads to a lot of passengers are not going here to have a drink. They're just coming here, take a look, and they leave again. And that means that usually you have a chance to get a seat here in the captain's bar, and I think it's a quite fair solution. Get a nice calm area with a wonderful view, and you have to pay a little extra to get this fantastic view. In my opinion, a quite good idea. We're now in the Hüfte restaurant, which is another specialty restaurant. This one is not included. You have to pay extra if you want to have dinner or lunch here. And as you can see, it has a Scandinavian design, and that's because it is a Scandinavian restaurant. You also have a Scandinavian cuisine here. Also a nice, fantastic restaurant, and we will see that in one of the upcoming videos. We're now heading to the biggest area on this deck, and that is the Harbor Market. The Harbor Market is the buffet restaurant on board. It replaces the Ankelmannsplatz on the other ships, but it works the same way. It is a buffet restaurant open almost all day long, starting with breakfast and ending with a late night dinner. What I really like about the Harbor Market is its size, so outside of peak hours you will easily find an empty table here. During peak times it can be a bit crowded, especially in the morning, because most Germans love buffet breakfast, even though you can also have a buffet breakfast in the Atlantic on deck 4. Still, most Germans usually head up to the buffet restaurant for breakfast, so it can get a bit busy. You have the buffet here on the side, so not only on the islands in the middle, like on other TUI ships, you also can get food from the side, which in my opinion is a bit better, because you can only queue from two sides. Then usually you have one defined queue line, which works a bit better than the islands in the middle, where people are queuing from all sides, and it's always a bit chaotic. Here you have those islands. I'm not the biggest fan of those, but here on the Mein Schiff Relax you have both concepts, so in my opinion a quite good idea. Also, the design of the buffet restaurant is very nice. It doesn't feel like a huge canteen like on other cruise ships. Might happen sometimes. Here you have a very nice and beautiful design. The outer area of the buffet restaurant is rather small, so there are not many outdoor seats available. Just those few we will see in a second here on the left side, and of course on the other side we have the same. And we are now reaching the so-called Agora. Agora is an outer area which is mainly intended for entertainment purposes. So here you have a huge stage, and a lot of outdoor events are taking place here at the Agora. You can see it here. We have a huge open area. Of course, it can be used for sun lounges, but it can also be used, for example, as a dance floor. In addition, we have the big stage and the big screen. We have a bar, and we have this theater-like seating area. And above we have an infinity pool, which we will see in a second a bit better. Just taking a look here at the Agora area first. And that means that we've now almost seen all public areas here on this deck, because the rear part of this deck is again exclusively reserved for the guests of the suites. Here we can see the big stage on the picture, and we're now heading to the other side and we can take a closer look at the Agora bar, which is in charge for the drinks of this area. What's quite interesting is that one deck above you only have the possibility to go from the rear part to the front part on one side. On the port side of the ship, on the starboard side, there is no connection from the rear to the front. That's quite unique. I'm not sure why it is like that. There would have also been the possibility to build a connection on the other side, but there's only a connection on this side above the bar. So now let's move on, heading aft, and we are now reaching the suites area, so I cannot access any more parts here. But we have the X-View restaurant, and in the evening it is also open for all passengers. It's the main restaurant for the guests of the suites, but it's also a specialty restaurant and you get some very nice food here. Of course, you have to pay extra if you want to use it as a regular passenger. If you're a suite passenger, you can use this restaurant for free. Here we can see the mentioned infinity pool above the Agora again. And now we are already on deck 17, the Aqua deck. This is the last deck, which is connecting all the way from the rear to the front, and we're now at the rear part, and here we have the bar 17, which is a nice bar with a view over the sternwave. You do not have a perfect view over the sternwave because below we have the X-Sun deck, just mentioned the area for suite passengers. But it is a very, very nice and beautiful bar. As always, I have to mention, of course, in the night they store away chairs and tables, so it does not look perfectly fine because it's not set up yet. But that's, as I mentioned before, because I did this ship tour very early in the morning. Here we are now shortly on deck 18 called Dune. And here we have another sun deck area. You have those little seating areas. Of course, they are also covered. In the night we will see one or two later on which are already uncovered. And here we're now again above the Agora, and you can see on this side we have the connection to the front. On the other side there is no such connection. I'm really not sure why it is like that. As you can see, there would have been the space to build the connection, but it's only available here on this side. So we're now heading further on to the front on deck 17, walking past the Agora. Here we have more seating options, more places for sun loungers. So of course on a ship like this you also have to have a lot of sun deck space available. We're heading further on to the front, and here we have the pool bistro where you can get some small snacks right next to the main pool, which we will see in a second. But first let's head up these slightly hidden stairs, and we're now back on deck 18, and here we have some more of those seating areas which are still covered with a nice view over the pool. Also, as these stairs are slightly hidden, it's a rather calm area, which is not too crowded usually, so if you're looking for a calm area, this is also a nice place to go. And we're now heading back down to the pool area, and there is one main complaint about the ship. So if you're looking at reviews of the Mein Schiff Relax, there's one thing that is almost always mentioned negatively, and that is the pool area. If you think about any other cruise ship, you will usually find one deck above the pool. So the pool itself is windproofed because there is windows on both sides, and then there's one deck above which serves as wind protection. But that's different here, and we will see it in a second. Here we can see the pool bar, which of course is serving the drinks for the pool area. And now, after taking a look at the picture, we can see the pool area. And as you can see, there is no deck above it. It's the highest deck in this area. And there is just a glass railing here on the right side, but it's not that high. So it means the wind can come above the railing, and it is quite windy here on the sun deck. And that's actually a problem, because especially if you're in the pool and it's not too warm outside, it's quite annoying if it's windy. So I'm not sure why they built it like this. I think it would have been much better to have a deck above that and to have this area more windproof, but unfortunately it's not like that. So this is one of the big downsides of the Mein Schiff Relax. Here we have another bar and bistro. The Pane is Sole. You can get some drinks and also some small snacks. We're gonna take a look at the picture now. Here in the background we can see the buffet area where you can get small snacks, and in the front here we can see the bar area, which also serves the pool area. So we've now heard the negative thing about the pool deck, but of course there's also something positive to mention, and that's of course the size of the pool. As you can see here, the pool is huge. It's one of the biggest pools on the oceans, and it is absolutely big enough for proper swimming, of course, at least if it's not too crowded, but it is a huge pool and you can do some proper swimming here. Right next to it on the other side we have the ice bar where you can get some nice ice cream, and then you can already see the blue light in the background. That's the so-called Wasserspiele. You could translate that to waterworks. I'm not really sure what the purpose of this area is. I think it's mainly intended for children because it's a very flat pool, so maybe it's nice for children to play inside, but it doesn't look like a children's area because it's not themed for children, so I'm not really sure what's the main purpose of this area. And now we're heading on to the front, and here we have the area for kids and teens. We have the Insel der Seeräuber Kids Club and the Nest Baby Room, and on the other side we have the gym. The gym, I would say, is medium sized for the size of the ship. It's about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller than on the older ships of TUI Cruises, but the older ships are much smaller, especially when it comes to sport equipments like those that we can see here. Could have been a bit more when it comes to the endurance sports equipment like those. There are a lot available, but TUI Cruises is a cruise line that is focusing on active passengers, and even with this amount of sport equipment it can get pretty busy in here. We have now seen almost all public areas of deck 17, so we're now back at deck 18 on the front part of the ship. Here we have a course room as an addition to the gym, and now we can take a look at the last public area that is also on deck 17, and that's the arena. It's a big indoor sports court with a seating area here when it is used for events, so it is located on deck 18 and on deck 17. Here we can see it on the picture. So now we've seen the last public area of deck 17 and we can continue our tour here on deck 18. We're now at the front of the ship again, and it is another area where you have the very beautiful view over the ship's bow to the front, and I really like that it is accessible for all passengers on board. You have those nice seating areas here. Once again, they're still covered for the night. Later on we will also see an uncovered one, so you can see a bit better how they look like. You can also see the blue track here, and that of course is the jogging track. The jogging track is a bit shorter than on the other ships of TUI Cruises, but it again comes with an increasing slope, so it's a bit more demanding than a usual jogging track on a cruise ship. As you can see, it is also used a lot even this early in the morning, and here we can see the increasing slope. This little bridge here is a bit higher than the rest of the jogging track, and we're gonna see it later on of course as well. Here we have a covered seating area, so here you can enjoy the sun when the weather is maybe not perfect, when it's windy for example, or there's a little bit of rain, but the temperatures are nice. You can use this area because it is covered. And now we are on this little bridge. Of course you have a nice view from up here, but bear in mind it's the jogging track, so please do not stand here for too long. Please do not be in the way of the joggers. This is the area for guests that want to go for a run and not for taking pictures. So I was also here just for a few seconds, just trying not to be in the way and leaving it as fast as possible again, but of course it has to be a part of the ship tour. We're now heading back down, and now we can head up those stairs up to deck 19, the last deck on board. So we're slowly getting to the end of the ship tour. This deck, deck 19, only exists in the front part of the ship, and here we have another big sun deck, a lot of space for sun loungers, and also from here we can enjoy the beautiful view over the ship's bow. We have a shuffleboard game here, so also those old traditions are kept on a new ship like this. Here you can see all those sun loungers still stacked for the night. And here we can see one of those seating areas uncovered, so you can see how nice they look. I think it's quite nice to sit here and enjoy the view over the ship's bow from one of those seating areas. And we're now heading to the last public area. We have a sauna here. Of course, I cannot show you because you have to make a reservation for it, but we also have another bar here on the ship. And before we are ending the video, maybe you have read a little bit about the ship and you found a few negative comments about it. And of course, I was also criticizing a few things here in my video, but you know, I'm not a very negative person. I'm always trying to focus on the positive things. And of course, I found a lot of positive things here on this ship as well. But if you read some reviews, you might get the impression that it's not a very good ship, but that's not true. There are just a few things that also I do not really like, but there are many more things that I really like. And there are also a lot of improvements to the older ships of TUI Cruises. So I hope with this video you got a proper first impression of the Mein Schiff Relax, which is bit more positive than the negative reviews you might find online, and it's a bit more realistic. There are a few things that are not perfect and there's a few things I really do not like, but there are a lot of good things and a lot of improvements, so in my opinion it is a very nice cruise ship. Here we've just seen the Mistral bar, which is the last public area I can show you. One of my favorite bars to enjoy a nice drink during the sunset, for example. And now we've seen all public areas of the Mein Schiff Relax, and in the next videos I will show you my cabin, I will show you the food on board, I will show you the life on board, and of course a bit of the itinerary and the ports I've visited. Here you can see when this video will be uploaded and the name of the song. As always, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you liked this video, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link. And I hope to see you in my next video then.